like I want to rewrite my whole speech, actually, after this beginning. So, yeah, it's been a lovely start and a lovely acknowledgement, welcome to country, and I'd like to acknowledge too people not only in this nation but also in all nations, having come just from Townsville with Indigenous leaders there in our group and having learnt a lot in the last week. And Leanne, I also want to acknowledge you actually for that start, because that's actually what we're about, is authentic leadership and being able to be true and open and vulnerable amongst a group like this and it be meaningful. And I really acknowledge you for that, because that's not easy to do. I also focused on the external sustainability, and now having heard your story, I thought, oh no, maybe I actually really needed to focus on the challenges that you're facing. And I'm sure they're immense, like all organisations, and I acknowledge you all for continuing to believe in sustainability and achieving something that I believe is possible. So thank you too for your example. With that 500 million, I reckon some of the ideas in my presentation might be able to be funneled into a bit of solar and positive water capture, and it could be quite exciting, and you could continue to lead the way. So thanks for not going to the Geelong Cup. I'm glad you're here. I saw all the closed signs as I'm walking down here today, and I thought, wow, actually, I know people were flying in from everywhere, but I thought, gosh, this is going to be interesting. I wonder if people have just ferried off. All right, Centre for Sustainability Leadership, as you mentioned, I'm the CEO till Monday, which is a bit sad, but I am going on to being a director and taking on CEO role of GECA, Good Environmental Choice Australia. So still probably be working with lots of you in your facilities. So yes, I look forward to that. What we do, in essence, is we find people like you, passionate people, and we empower them and look at how we can create a vision together. You already know, I think, a lot around what you'd like to create, and the next few days of being able to renew that vision and connect together is really important. I'm going to have some water, sorry. And excuse my plastic bottle as well. At least it's Indigenous.
And you're travelling.
Mm-hmm. I know, but it's not a very good excuse. So what we believe in is creativity, capability, and community. I see universities as very much in that space as well. Core business is growing creativity and capability and establishing communities. Maybe that's a bit of a byproduct, but when I go into university, I feel the community. I feel the community of the academics and the staff and the students across faculty. And I think there lies a real opportunity and actually synergy between what we do and what you all do and are trying to create. So yes, we're looking for that sweet spot. I agree the economic is really important. I'd also ask, though, when we look at the economic context of sustainability, that we also try to look at a longer term horizon. And when I speak to a lot of people trying to create change in things like universities and justify budgets, the challenge is, well, we need a return in 2 years. And it's like, well, sometimes that's not possible. But what could we do if we looked at a return in 4 or 5 years and we could justify that? If we were willing just to stretch it a little bit further. And I think then it becomes very interesting and a lot of things become possible. We talked about adapting and slashing budgets and resilience. And you hear the word resilience go around a lot these days. And I don't think it's as easy as we think it is, actually. When I think of leadership for sustainability, I see a lot of people, including myself and including seeing you today, who are so passionate about it and are so committed to it that we put so much of our life into it. And it's not easy. It's quite challenging, and we do care about it, and that makes it increasingly difficult. One of our lecturers, Jason Clark, that Sarah knows, says we need to care less to do more. And I really try that sometimes. I still haven't got it right. But I wonder whether you too are in that position where, this is something that's not just a career or a job. It's often something that we are committed to and passionate about. So how can we actually be objective and be able to look at the bigger picture and still be strategic and still get up every day and do the marathon? How do we do that? How do we adapt with the ongoing change and policy and budget slashing and changing of definition of what sustainability is? I was in Queensland with the government on the day that they reintroduced sustainability back into their mission statement. And they said, well, don't quote me on it yet because we don't know what it means, but it's back in. And I was like, yeah, you know, these people had spent years taking the word sustainability out of every bit of collateral and website. People who were passionate about sustainability, taking out the word. And then it was suddenly back in, but no one knew what it meant. And no one knew what they could do. That was a few months ago, so I'm hoping things have improved. So yes, you gave a great example actually of frugal innovation, which I want to talk about too, and I think that is very important when we look at adaptation. But how do we personally continue to adapt as leaders as well? It's not just our institutions or our infrastructure, it's us and the amount of change. And you've just described an amazing week that I can't imagine that you're here in conference. But it's that. It's how do we have all of that all of the time? And 3 budget changes in the last week or whatever, and still turn up and be inspiring. So what are the challenges? And I love this is Sculpture by the Sea in Sydney and one of my furs, which I quite love. I just want to talk to you briefly about some of the challenges. So yes, there's social injustice, inequality, water, food security, population. Immense challenges within an Australian context. And I do wonder in the next 20 to 30 years what that's going to look like. I think there's going to be great challenges ahead, and I also think there'll be great opportunities. Increasing challenges of affordable housing, rising unemployment and redundancies. Again, we've heard of that today. I hear it everywhere. And I wonder around the job market, what are we thinking when we keep taking away jobs and putting in technology? Have we fast forward 20, 30 years to look at what's ahead? Have we really thought about that? I'm not sure. I know the Queensland government are turning their heads to it now, looking at the change of coal and knowing that about 1 in 4 jobs in the next 10 years will be gone. And how are they going to replicate it? And I don't think social entrepreneurship and startups are going to be the only answer. Because what we actually need are people like you in big systems of change who are creating change makers to be able to navigate that future. So how do we create that? How do we actually, and we're a big believer of trying to encourage people also to stay in organisations. I see many leaders very passionate about sustainability struggle to be in organisations because of the challenges. But how do we actually stay there, become more resilient and adapt, sell the vision, show what's possible in order to actually show another way of doing things as well? So I urge you to look at that, think 20 to 30 years down the line, what could that look like? Population increase, obviously a big factor too when we look at not only an Australian context, but I also ask us to look more beyond to our neighbours. Just saw there was a news flash about the China Free Trade Agreement, and certainly things are changing very rapidly in that space too. And in the university sector, obviously, Asia and our neighbours are very important also. Water. I'm from South Australia, Adelaide girl, driest state of the driest continent in the world. So what are we doing now for water in our institutions and our buildings and our infrastructure? There's so much that's possible. I worked with a guy, an alumni actually, who designed up a building that was water energy positive. Everything was positive. It got slashed. It's actually won lots of awards, but it got slashed. It's still best practice, still globally recognised, but it was about 40% of what it could have been. So I know you all care. I'm talking to the converted. I want to talk a little moment about why I care, and then I'd like you to share with each other about why you do care. So for me, when I was 15, I got called to my grandfather's bed, and he was dying. He was 96, and I was very blessed actually to have time with my grandfather, who was a World War I veteran. It's not too many people of my age who had that opportunity, because he was an older father. But he used to talk to me every day about the waste of World War I and how it was the biggest challenge that he'd experienced in our humanity, and probably even more so than World War II. He was going in and out of consciousness, and my parents went out to talk to the nurses about what they were going to do. And all of a sudden he woke up and he looked at me and he said, "Kate, whatever you do, please make sure there's peace in this world." And then he died. So I've lived with that since I was 15, and I've really struggled to find how I do that. How do I do that? It's a real driver and a motivator for me, and a big challenge, and sometimes a burden. But I do believe that we can, as a humanity, live in peace. And I do believe that sustainability and the challenges that we face in the next 15 to 20 years are going to be a similar challenge to something like World War I. And if we don't get it right, it could be incredibly difficult. But I'm actually very optimistic, because it's people like you, people who are passionate, people who are committed. I think knowing why you care and why you do what you do within the daily grind is really important. So I want you to just take a few moments now to actually find someone next to you and share why you do care about sustainability and why you do what you do. It's always a dangerous thing to throw it over to the floor. But for me, it's actually really important that you know why as you launch into these few days. Did anyone surprise themselves with their answer? Or remember? Had anyone forgotten why they do what they do? No? Well, that's good news. Just want to say again, to reinforce that I am very positive about the future, and things in the last 2 years have shifted incredibly. Institutions, like you've given great examples, are leading the way in prioritising infrastructure. We have business, and I've just asked whether I can release some news, but I haven't got a response yet. So, but business are committing in many levels to doing significant things, and I have to say people that I'm very surprised at. So for me, that's very heartening. And our authors, such as Paul Gilding in The Great Disruption, we have Tim Flannery in his Book of Hope, people who have been doing decades of work on this, who know that we still face 2 to 3 degrees, are actually optimistic. And it's because of people like you, it's because of our technology, and it's because of our passion and willingness to pass the baton to others. And that's where I see the role of universities is hugely significant and should not be underestimated. So, the Cheshire Cat. I always love the Cheshire Cat. Sarah knows that I love the Cheshire Cat. So, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And it's great that as individuals we have a plan. It's great that organisations and universities have a roadmap. And I urge you all to do that. And that's what you're all doing. I'm aware of that. My question is, how can we collaborate more together as well, so that it is a coordinated response, that we do have that in a more localised, national, regional, and then international approach. We will need a coordinated, systematic approach to achieve this. And that is perhaps something we're not so good at, I would say. Collaboration and moving competition to cooperation, for me, is going to be paramount. So how can we do that? How can we lead the way, not only within our own faculty and teams and working with other members in our universities, but also with other universities, such as this opportunity, and that's why these next few days is so important. And also internationally with business, and with government as well. How can we continue to grow an infrastructure and a system that's going to work? We need to believe that it's possible. I believe it's possible. And certainly you're the passionate converted one, so I'm hoping you too believe that it's possible. I want to talk today briefly around the Sustainable Development Goals. Is everyone familiar with the 17? Great. I think, so I won't go into them for detail, but I think we have our 17. Yes, every country has them. I was involved in the education stream of what the goals look like. I still think we could be a little bit more ambitious, so I'm encouraging you guys to perhaps roll out that opportunity, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So here are the 17. When I look at this, I see universities as a microcosm of our whole community. That's why I'm so excited about meeting all of you. And the fact that the next few days you're going into streams to look at facilities, to look at learning, looking at leadership and governance, and how can we actually embed these so that we're all pulling in the same direction? How are we going to do that? So I look at all of those 17 and I see something somewhere that universities can lead the way. And whether that's through infrastructure, whether it's through social equity and a culture that you build for not only your staff, but your students. Is it infrastructure in terms of water and energy? Looking at jobs, how to not keep slashing jobs, but creating jobs. Responsible consumption. How can we do better in responsible consumption? I might speak to you when I'm in GECA about that, see how you're all going. Yeah. Life below water, life on land. Learning and education is a huge component of not only being a role model, but how do we teach others to do this? We won't know the roles that your students have in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. We don't know what that looks like. And I think there's some really fundamental skills and perhaps philosophical ways of responding that we can embed in all our programs. Whether that's internal within your own organisation or every faculty. Whose university has sustainability embedded in every program? Pardon? On the way. Yeah. I really urge you to look at how we can achieve that. I actually thought there'd be more. I'm a little surprised. But it is a work in progress. And I know that a lot of people are wanting to do it. But if, again, we have a coordinated approach so every profession, every skill is working towards the same thing, then we're going to have a far better chance of creating that vision. So I ask you, in terms of your role, where you sit right now, whether it's facilities, on any of those, how can you create change? Where does your leftover food go? What's your biodiversity like? What's your carbon footprint? What happens if you have students who are hungry? Is there a mechanism to support them, or who are in poverty? And I think sometimes in Australia we think that it doesn't exist. I tell you it does. And when I used to be a community nurse, I used to be a nurse many years ago, and far west Sydney, I'd visit 3 families in a 1-bedroom flat. And I tell you it does happen, and not just in our Indigenous populations. And it happens for our students too, who are trying to create a better future for them and their families, actually. So, 3 things I see as important. Creativity. When was the last time you got out the Play-Doh, did some colouring in, and think big picture? So many people don't see it as a valuable process anymore. I think creative intelligence is going to be a huge driver and solution to achieving what we need to achieve. You see there's colouring in books that have developed everywhere. I mean, I just saw one and went, oh, that's nice. And now they're everywhere. Must be a market. So I'm thrilled about that. How can you give that to yourself in your role and believe it's possible, dream big, even if you have to come back down? Yeah? How can you give it to your students? Teachers say that by the age of 9, most students know they have to provide the right answer, and they know how to do that. So creativity, critical thinking, social intelligence, emotional intelligence, all of those skills, which, to be honest, I was trying to put very much in the education stream for SDGs, but didn't quite get there, so anything you can do, would be really paramount about bringing them in. It doesn't just stop. Creative intelligence and the need for that doesn't stop when you're 9 or 5, 15, or even when you're 43. So how can we give that to ourselves as well? Innovation. You saw from those 17 goals there's a lot to do. And I don't think they're all going to be possible in 15 years, even in Australia, and particularly not without government's, huge support. Like you mentioned, I mentioned earlier about frugal innovation. I'd like to encourage you to think around where are the co-synergies. So how can you solve multiple solutions at once? So frugal innovation is an Indian term, and there's a great book called Jugaad, which is all around creativity and creating things and solutions with limited resources. So you've given some great examples of that today, where it can also be a share economy and benefit other people in our community as well. So innovation. I ask you to look at the ethical lens. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. Is it scalable, sustainable, meaningful? Expect side effects. Expect failure. And always make yourselves redundant. There's some great innovation happening elsewhere, and they're using our technology. Some of the solar that's come from Australian universities that we know have been taken up far more overseas than they have in Australia. Have everyone seen this? It's the solar cycleway in Korea. So they've got a covered cycle path in the middle of the motorway, but rather than just having a normal cover, they've got a solar cover, which generates all the power for the lighting of the motorway, for the tolls, and actually some of the community around. We have an Indigenous solar battery that's been designed. Has anyone seen that? That's actually more powerful than Tesla's. Because they had to, because they don't have much energy. The diesel generators out there are so expensive, they can't keep food cool. So they made a battery with solar. I ask you to look at the 7 steps in innovation. Sometimes we can get stuck with just doing one, and I ask you to move through all 7. Imperative, do we really need to do this? And so I ask the sustainability lens to be there. Having the insight, having a vision, being passionate about it, and being inspired. Coming up with ideas, even if they seem crazy at the time. And then asking which ones do we prioritise? Which ones are going to have the most impact? And implement them. Sometimes, ideas, people like myself, that's the most hardest. But yeah, how do we actually implement, act, reflect, and react again? It's the rapid prototyping process that we need to keep doing. And the inspection is the evaluation is a key part of that process too. So creativity, innovation, and lastly leadership, probably my most favourite. We know top-down leadership is not respected by our upcoming generations. It's not going to be one that is valued or adhered to, I would say, in the next 10, 20 years. And for me, we've just had an amazing example of leadership this morning, so I need to say very little on it, in fact. But I do see that there are some key capabilities of our leaders of the future that we see are required in order to deliver the vision that we're going to need. So I just want you to take one moment to look at that list and write down one that you know is a strength for you right now, something that you're really good at, that you can take within your role right now and have impactful change. And also choose one that you're not so good at, that you'd like to learn and develop, that would be strategic for you to grow. Everyone got one? Oh, you didn't write it down. Do you want to write it down? It's in your head. You can write it down. It's a good thing to write it down. I'm going to encourage you to all ask each other later at morning tea. So as you move into your streams over the next few days, I ask you to collaborate and look at co-synergies across all of these opportunities. Because I do think amazing things are really possible, and we're at a cusp globally and nationally. We've got climate change talks coming up in Paris. If we don't do anything significant, I can tell you that the global pressure in the next few years for us to do so is going to be immense. And I think our care for international relations are going to overtake perhaps some of our internal political challenges. And significant change will happen in Australia. And universities as a microcosm can lead the way and be a role model as to how it can be done, environmentally, economically, and socially. And those students will take that out, and they will have experienced that, and they will take it out and build that world and role model it. And that will all be through your own leadership. So I really ask you, as you move into your streams, to look for those synergies, those collaborations and co-opetition, because perhaps that is going to be actually our biggest struggle, not the technology or how we're going to, reduce our carbon. It's often the people and the interrelatedness. So as I come to my end, and I know it's morning tea time and I'm probably slightly over. Apologies. I want to urge you over the next few days to look for those leadership strengths and your opportunity for growth. Look at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and ask which ones can you drive within your role? Which ones can you bring other people, other sectors in to support you? Because I believe business and aspects of government are ready to do so. I urge you to embrace the unique opportunity that you have, even with all the challenges of working within a system of a university that we've heard. And I could do a whole other speech on that around how to help support you in that. And I know you know them more than me in terms of your internal challenges. But you do have a unique opportunity being within the university system, I believe, to role model that. So at morning tea or over the next few days, I'd like you to ask each other, or share why you care, like you did today. What capabilities do you have to create that change and deliver on this vision? And what is your first step to action? Because I believe if we achieve all those 17 goals, we will achieve peace and justice. So lastly, I wish you all the best in your endeavours, not only just in this conference, but in your careers within university. And I urge you to stick with it amongst all the challenges and remember why you care every day, because I know that it's not easy and we all depend on it. Thank you.